Hi guys, so today I'm going to take you through the process of drafting the bustier part of this our beautiful African print dress. So first of all, I marked out the shoulder measurement, which was 8 inches, and the armhole measurement, which was 8.5 inches, and then I took out 1 inch from the beginning of the armhole line for my shoulder slope, and here I marked out the 8 inches for the shoulder to be sure it's the same, and then I connected my dots, and there is our armhole, and it's time for me to create the armhole curve, which is 7.5 divided into 2, which gives 3.2 or 3.7, and then I marked it out and I got my armhole curve with my French curve. Next, I marked out the neckline using 4 inches for the width and 6 inches for the depth. The bust span or nipple to nipple measurement I was working with was 7 inches, so I used 3.5, and that's what I was marking out. Of course, I added my ½ inch for sewing allowance. With that done, I proceeded to marking my vertical measurements or my vertical markings, and that's for the bust, under bust, and then waist. Then I connected with ruler, and after that it was time for the bustier curve creation. On the chest line, by that bust span vertical line, I marked 1 inch to the left and ½ inch to the right in order for me to get my curve or my cup at the top at the chest line. And this is what I was doing here. That's the marking. And then at the under bust line, I left the bust line, I went to the under bust line. As you can see, I marked in 1 inch to the right and 1.5 inches to the left, and I did the same thing for the waistline. And so I used 2.5 inches in total for my dart manipulations. If you look closely, you see that before I went ahead to use my French curve to get the cups, I went ahead to mark out the line like so, and then I went to the bust line and I marked up 1 inch and marked down 1 inch on that bust span line. Just to close there, I was just marking out the bust, the waist, just for the marking sake. You can see I marked out the 1 inch on both sides, up and down, before I started using my French curve to get my bust cups or the curves around it. And please, when you finish doing this, endeavor to curve your cups properly. Let it not end up being very sharp, because it will affect your sewing. It might make your bustier to be too sharp or too pointy, so endeavor to curve it up. So please take note, especially if you're a beginner, because of the darts that was marked at the chest line, it is very important for you to know that there is need for replacement, and that's what I was doing here. I marked the distance between the two darts, and then I also marked it out on the armhole curve or line. As you can see over there, I checked all the measurements, and the same thing for the upside, and then with that I created a new armhole. As you can see here, I went ahead to do the same thing I did for the first armhole, and this is it here. We created another armhole. When that was done, I also went ahead to create a new neckline, because I couldn't use the 4 inches since the chest dart had already taken place of the neckline. I had to go in by 2 inches. As you can see, I marked out the new neckline, and then I used my ruler to connect like this. That is the same thing I was still indicating here. So yeah, I was still trying to mark out the neckline here, so I wanted to get the same connection using that 6 inches length vertically, and then so now it is 6 inches vertically and 6 inches horizontally. And this is me telling you that if you close up that dart at the chest line, the neckline will be too tight, or it will reduce the neckline. So that's it. When that was done, I went ahead to mark out my shoulder slope. As I marked out earlier, I went ahead to use the ruler to mark it out for it to be visible. And then here also I'm telling you that if you join at the end of the day, if you finish cutting out and you join the darts, there will be a deduction. So now I'm imputing the right measurements, and you must take note of all the darts that you have removed. So here I checked it and it was a 2.5, and then I went ahead to place it at the left side. Then after the replacement, you also add your 1 inch for ease and then 1 inch for sewing. So at the end of the day, you're replacing about 3.5 inches or 4 inches, depends. You can add as much allowance as possible, so that when you are joining or when you're doing your final coupling, you can subtract whatever excess. It is better for you to have excess than for you to have less fabric. So that's it. So when I was done getting all my right measurements and markings, I went ahead to draw it out, and now it's time for us to do our cutting. At this point, you have to be very careful while cutting so you don't cut the wrong parts. So watch carefully and see how I am cutting all the parts gently, no rush, just take your time. Yes, the video might be on speed up, but yours, of course, you do your own carefully. And remember that my cutting at the shoulder or the armhole line is the second armhole, please. This is the second armhole that I'm cutting, not the first one. You must always take notes. If you like, you can do other measurements or draftings before you create your armhole, but your armhole also aids you in doing other measurements, so you can let go of the shoulder measurement and just do other ones. If you notice, this drafting is not the regular bust cup drafting where you cut out the yoke separate from the bustier, but this is the shoulder joined together with the bustier. So that is why I had so many extensions and adjustments. So this is a different style. You can still do yours without the shoulder. And right here, I had already stayed my padding or my wadding to the fabric. Use 5 inches to notch. After ironing, this is how it will turn out to be. So if you're interested in seeing how to pad properly, proper padding, you can either DM me to join my class. So I'll see you in another video. Thank you very much for watching. Bye bye.